LETTER the eighth of Life in Mexico. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Life in Mexico by Francis Calderón de la Barca. Letter the eighth. Ball in preparation. Agreeable family. Fine voices. Theatre. Smoking. Castle of Chapultepec. Viceroy Galvez. Montezuma's Cypress. Vice Queen. Valley of Mexico. New Year's Day. Opening of Congress. Visits from the Diplomatic Corps. Poblana Dress. Function Extraordinaria. Theatre. Visit to the Cathedral of Guadalupe. Divine Painting. Bishop beggars. Mosquitoes' eggs. A great ball is to be given on the 8th of January in the theatre for the benefit of the poor, which is to be under the patronage of the most distinguished ladies of Mexico. After much deliberation amongst the patronesses, it is decided that it shall be a ball costume, and I have some thoughts of going in the Poblana dress, which I before described to you. As I am told that the Señora G a wore it at a ball in London, when her husband was minister there, I have sent my maid to learn the particulars from her. We called to-day on a family nearly related to the C.A.'s, and who have been already excessively kind to us. Señor A d, who is married to a daughter of Don Francisco Tagle, a very distinguished Mexican. We found a very large, very handsome house, the walls and roof painted in the old Spanish style, which, when well executed, has an admirable effect. The lady of the house, who is only 19, I took a fancy to at first sight. She is not regularly beautiful, but has lovely dark eyes and eyebrows, with fair complexion and fair hair, and an expression of the most perfect goodness, with very amiable manners. I was surprised by hearing her sing several very difficult Italian songs with great expression and wonderful facility. She has a fine contralto, which has been cultivated, but some Spanish ballads, and little songs of the country, she sang so delightfully, and with so much good nature and readiness, that had it not been a first visit, I should have begged her to continue during half the morning. Fine voices are said to be extremely common, as is natural in a country peopled from Spain, and the opera, while it lasted, contributed greatly to the cultivation of musical taste. In the evening we went to the theatre. Such a theatre! Dark, dirty, redolent of bad odours. The passages leading to the boxes so ill lighted, that one is afraid in the dark to pick one's steps through them. The acting was nearly of a piece. The first actress, who is a favourite, and who dresses well, and bears a high reputation for good conduct, is perfectly wooden, and never frightened out of her proprieties in the most tragical scenes. I am sure there is not a fold deranged in her dress when she goes home. Besides, she has a most remarkable trick of pursing up her mouth in a smile, and frowning at the same time with tears in her eyes, as if personifying an April day. I should like to hear her sing, "Set a smile to a tear." There was no applause, and half the boxes were empty, whilst those who were there seemed merely to occupy them from the effect of habit, and because this is the only evening amusement. The prompter spoke so loud, that as coming events cast their shadows before, every word was made known to the audience in confidence, before it came out upon the stage officially. The whole pit smoked, the galleries smoked, the boxes smoked, the prompter smoked, a long stream of smoke curling from his box, giving something oracular and Delphic to his prophecies. The force of smoking could no further go. The theatre is certainly unworthy of this fine city. 31st. We have spent the day in visiting the castle of Chapultepec, a short league from Mexico, the most haunted by recollections of all the traditionary sites of which Mexico can boast. Could these hoary cypresses speak, what tales might they not disclose, standing there with their long gray beards, and outstretched venerable arms, century after century, already old when Montezuma was a boy, and still vigorous in the days of Bustamante. There has the last of the Aztec emperors wandered with his dark eyed harem. Under the shade of these gigantic trees he has rested, perhaps smoked his tobacco mingled with amber, and fallen to sleep, his dreams unhaunted by visions of the stern traveller from the far East, whose sails even then might be within sight of the shore. In these tanks he has bathed. Here were his gardens, and his aviaries, and his fish ponds. Through these now tangled and deserted woods he may have been carried by his young nobles in his open litter, under a splendid dais, stepping out upon the rich stuffs with his slaves spread before him on the green and velvet turf. And from the very rock where the castle stands he may have looked out upon his fertile valley and great capital, with its canoe-covered lakes, and outspreading villages, and temples, and gardens of flowers, no care for the future darkening the bright vision. Tradition says that now these caves and tanks and woods are haunted by the shade of the conqueror's Indian love, the far famed Doña Marina, but I think she would be afraid of meeting with the wrathful spirit of the Indian Emperor. The castle itself, modern though it be, seems like a tradition. The Viceroy Galvez, who built it, is of a bygone race. The apartments are lonely and abandoned, the walls falling to ruin. The glass of the windows and the carved work of the doors have been sold, and standing at this great height, exposed to every wind that blows, it is rapidly falling to decay. We were accompanied by Count C a, and received by a Mexican governor, who rarely resides there, and who very civilly conducted us everywhere. But Chapultepec is not a show place. One must go there early in the morning, when the dew is on the grass, or in the evening, when the last rays of the sun are gilding with rosy light the snowy summits of the volcanoes, and dismount from your horse, or step out of your carriage, and wander forth without guide or object, or fixed time for return. We set off early, passing over a fine paved road, divided by a great and solid aqueduct of 900 arches, one of the two great aqueducts by which fresh water is conveyed to the city, and of which the two sources are in the hill of Chapultepec, and in that of Santa Fe, at a much greater distance. When we arrived, the sleepy soldiers who were lounging before the gates threw them open to let the carriage enter, and we drew up in front of the great cypress, known by the name of Montezuma's cypress, a most stupendous tree, dark, solemn, and stately, its branches unmoved as the light wind played amongst them, of most majestic height, and 41 feet in circumference. A second cypress standing near, and of almost equal size, is even more graceful, and they, and all the noble trees which adorn these speaking solitudes, are covered with a creeping plant, resembling gray moss, hanging over every branch like long gray hair, giving them a most venerable and druidical look. We wandered through the noble avenues, and rested under the trees, and walked through the tangled shrubberies, bright with flowers and coloured berries, and groped our way into the cave, and stood by the large clear tank, and spent some time in the old garden, and then got again into the carriage, that we might be dragged up the precipitous ascent on which stands the castle, the construction of which aroused the jealousy of the government against the young count, whose taste for the picturesque had induced him to choose this elevated site for his summer palace. The interior was never finished, yet, even as it stands, it cost the Spanish government $300,000. When we look at its strong military capabilities and commanding position, fortified with salient walls and parapets towards Mexico, and containing on its northern side great moats and subterraneous vaults capable of holding a vast supply of provisions, the jealousy of the government, and their suspicions that it was a fortress masked as a summer retreat, are accountable enough. The Vice Queen Galvez was celebrated for her beauty and goodness, and was universally adored in Mexico. A sister of hers, who still survives, and who paid me a visit the other day, says that her beauty chiefly consisted in the exceeding fairness of her complexion, very few blondes having then been seen in this part of the world. From the terrace that runs round the castle.